Okay, very good. Beginning agenda item is, or the second agenda item is approve the meeting minutes from September 26, 2022. Has everybody had some time to review the meeting minutes, and everybody good with them? Anybody have any questions or corrections that they'd like to make?
Did we correct the second meeting to tonight? Because originally it was the wrong day. I picked that up when I read the agenda. I didn't.
Okay, so within the meeting minutes, the dates are on? I don't have them.
Okay.
I only have tonight's agenda. I don't have the meeting minutes.
The meeting minutes, when I looked at them, I sent an email saying it said the next meeting would be on the 6th. Okay. It was really the 13th. So I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't see. That's all.
Okay,
I'll make that revision.
Thank
okay,
you.
Christine, if you could just do that.
Yes. Yep.
Within the meeting minutes. All right.
Yes.
And are those minutes good with everybody else?
I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
I second.
Okay, a roll call vote on that.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well.
Aye.
Jean is a yes.
Aye,
Chris, yes.
that's Kathy.
Okay, Kathy and Chris are both yeses. Okay, it's majority action of the board. We're missing one still, correct? Okay. All right. Next agenda item is review and approve the draft of the community survey. I'm hoping everybody has gotten the update from Joe. The introduction to.
I do have some comment on it. Okay. Exactly the first sentence, actually second. I think it should state, this is your opportunity to tell us your thoughts on housing, actually on town-owned land available by the town to acquire regarding housing and up. We don't have any.
That's too specific.
Well,
because this is going to be housing in general.
I don't know that we have the ability to tell a private landowner what they can do with their land.
No, but we have the ability to address zoning. We have the ability to identify general areas. We don't need to identify the specific parcel, but we can talk about areas. We can talk about creating zoning districts. We can talk about rezoning. We're not telling a property owner what they should do with their property. We're identifying the tools by which we can encourage development.
I think actually it should still say either town-owned land or private land then, because people might have, it might affect it, right? It might affect how people are going to respond. My role for being involved here is on town-owned land and finally addressing 40B failures of this community and not providing it. So again, I guess it's up to the committee whether or not they agree with me, but I think it would be important to identify either town-owned land or private land. And I'm sure people are going to have difference in opinions on what each should be. So I think the specifics are necessary, Joe.
I just want to weigh in on that. I mean, there's lots of town-owned lands that's restricted in use. So I don't think it's appropriate to say town-owned land because we're not going to change restricted use town-owned land. You know, there are a variety of different issues. I don't disagree that town-owned land that has unrestricted use should be considered, but there's a lot of town-owned land that is restricted use.
Catherine has her hand raised.
Yeah, I agree with Jean. I think that, and with Joe, this is a housing production plan. It's not just has to do with 40B or affordable housing. And it basically says, what does Upton need or want? And then we get into the weeds about where the town of Upton would like to see the housing developed. And I think that's the time where we look at what inventory we have and what appropriate uses may be. I also think that's part of what the Affordable Housing Trust needs to do is we need to look at where, but that's a separate process, is we need to look at what housing is available and what land is available. And I think that's a good vehicle, Alan, to address, the lack of, affordable housing that we have in the community. I think this is more of a bigger picture about, and, you know, sort of the mega picture of what does Upton need?
I agree with Kathy.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Laura?
I do think that the survey needs to be more general. I think we can address your concerns in the future. I don't know if that would really change people's opinion on filling out the survey. Maybe I'm confused, you know, it's in the first line, you want to change housing development in Upton on town or private land?
This is to invite people to do the survey, right?
Right, yes.
People might not even do it, in my opinion, without the inclusion of that. That's fine if there's not, you know, a second or, you know, the rest of the committee, but to get them to look at it, this has to entice them. So again, I mean, honestly, if this came to me, I'm thinking private or public, what are we talking about? I might just delete it because it doesn't inform me enough.
It's an interesting perspective. Absolutely, it's a valid point. I just don't know exactly where in the survey or where, you know, whether or not it's necessary in the opening paragraph or the opening introduction to it or not. I'm indifferent either way. If the committee wanted to do that, I'd be more than happy to include it. If they don't want to do it, you know, again, we can address it later. So
I would recommend that we don't include it in the, you know, we can, you know, discuss that later on, but I recommend that we do not include it. It adds words and I think it confuses people more. I don't think we should add it to the beginning of the survey. And, you know, maybe we do add a question if people want to add another question is, should town-owned land be used to create housing opportunities for people? You know, or something along that line, but I don't think it belongs in the beginning.
I agree, because the intro letter should not be that specific, and it should be more to the point, so people won't get burdened by the extra wording.
okay. Gene, I can see your hand.
Okay, I think, Alan, to address what your concern, which I think has some merit in terms of, you know, the unrestricted use land. We do have a section about the CPA funds that would seem to logically follow after the CPA funds, you know, to have a question, would you be in favor of the, you know, the town-owned land with unrestricted use being available for affordable housing development? That would be a valuable data point to have. And it automatically infers that you know, that unrestricted use town-owned land is you know, would be available for that kind of use.
I agree.
All right, how about the rest of the paragraphs? When we look at in its entirety, the introduction, are we good with that as Joe has presented it? Or are there any other, Emily, Gabe, do you have any thoughts that you could add? Or do you have any questions, or are we good with this as it is?
I think Joe had some changes that he made to the opening paragraph. Those were after this draft, weren't they, Joe?
So I took what Emily had sent out and added on to that. So the most recent questionnaire, that narrative, that's what my comments are based off of. So I sent out that email and track changes so people could see the underlying language and sort of the final language. You know, it looks like it's the same length because you have a third of the text crossed out, and it will be condensed into probably 3/4 of a page if you were to print it out. And I tried to stay consistent with what the board, what the committee wanted, as far as just getting down to some digestible facts as it related to what's considered affordable. So, you know, even if you went just sort of general section by section, just to sort of review, see if there was any comments. I just offer it as recommendation if people had other thoughts. You know,
Just,
definitely welcome.
I did look at Joe's comments or Joe's revisions, and he shortened it and I think made it concise. I would be comfortable moving that we accept, the intro as amended by Joe or as marked up by Joe, but I think that we want some discussion on that first. So if folks want Joe to go over it paragraph by paragraph, that's fine. Or if people have already reviewed it and are ready to go to a vote, that's fine too.
So as Kathy has mentioned, is everybody good with this? Is there any paragraph that warrants further discussion? Or would you like to start with the minutes or the other questions, I should say, and we can motion the whole survey? Or do you want to motion just the opening paragraph?
Well, I think we were looking at, Joe had marked it up. He had redlined, he'd sent us a redlined version later today. So yeah, so if people want to accept that, or else we can do it all together. And at that point, decide whether we want Joe's version of the intro that CMRPC provided. I don't care.
I would second that we could accept the letter that Joe prepared with the revisions as is.
That makes sense. You want to do it that way? We'll accept this. Okay. All right. So why don't we do that? Kathy, could you please re-motion that? And
Okay.
Christine, I'll take your second.
Yeah, the motion is to approve the introduction to the survey as amended by Joe Layton.
I second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Ellen, please. Abstain.
Aye, Laura.
Laura, is that okay?
Yes.
I am a yay as well. Catherine,
A,
Jean,
Aye.
and Christine.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving on to the survey.
I can
Question?
share my screen here so we can go through it question by question. How does that sound? Okay, so the first question, I don't think there were any changes made to this. Asking about why folks decide to live in Upton.
Okay, if everybody's good with that, we'll just move on to question 2. If anybody has any comments or questions, please raise your hand. Go ahead, Emily.
All right. Question 2. I think this was question 3 before, but I moved it up just because it felt better for the flow. How important is it for you to remain in Upton as you age? The third one, I believe this was 2 questions before, and we kind of combined them into one. So we're asking, do you plan to live in your current residence as you age into retirement? And it gives you kind of sentences you can agree with or disagree with. Do you want me to read through all of these options? Because I'm happy to change some of the language if there's something that's better.
I just have can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Do you plan to live in your current residence as you age?
Yeah.
Rather than adding into retirement, because some people who answer this hopefully will be retired.
Mhm.
And, that's just my comment, but if people disagree, that's fine. It's not that important.
I agree with that.
The question's fine for me is the way I read it. So does anybody, did you want to make a change to it? Or are you recommending a change?
I just didn't know if the into retirement meant that as you move towards retirement, but it might be confusing to people that are already retired and living it up, and that's all. But if folks don't think so, I'm comfortable either way. I just raised it and I can be rejected and my feelings won't be hurt.
If nobody else agrees with changing it, I would suggest we just move on to question 4.
Okay,
I agree.
Do we feel comfortable with the answer options for this question? First one's basically, I plan to live in my home as I age and I will be able to afford my home. Second is, I plan to live in my home, but I'm unsure if I will be able to afford housing costs. The third option is, no, I don't plan to live in my current home because I will not be able to afford my housing costs. The fourth is, no, I do not plan to live in my current home. However, I would like to remain in Upton if there is housing available that meets my needs. And the fifth is, no, I do not plan on staying in Upton for reasons unrelated to housing affordability. How do those sound for options? Did I capture everything?
I think you captured everything myself. I don't know if anybody sees anything differently. Jean, Catherine, Christine, do you see anything that
No,
you
that
think
looks,
has been omitted?
I agree with you, Steve. I don't see anything else.
it looks fine.
It looks fine. There's just, I have to reread the survey, but one of the questions that has come up recently for some elderly friends is that around mobility, and housing and mobility are so closely tied that I kind of think that either we have to put this in the survey or, address it in some manner in terms of, remaining in town in your current residence. I mean, I think there has to be some sort of way to address the mobility issue. And I don't know if it's here or someplace else in the document.
So I would think maybe for this question, the fourth one here, I don't plan on living in my current home, but I would like to remain in the community if there is housing available that meets my needs. I'm trying to think if there's other questions too. There was one question where it was asking about the different housing types, the desirability question, and there was one option that's single level homes that might also capture that.
And there was also housing for special populations, e.g. disabled youth, so.
Those none of those address the issue that I'm talking about. The issue that I'm talking about is the people that want to stay in their homes, but are challenged to stay in the community even without some access to transportation services to either get downtown or to get to services. I know we have the Council on Aging has some services, but I do think that needs to be addressed somehow in this housing production plan, and especially in terms of how we're thinking about the neighboring community issue around the MBTA requirements. So I like I said, I don't want to get bogged down on this question. I'm just wondering if there's a way to address this similar to addressing the issue around use of town-owned land as being another metric that we want to collect in the housing production plan.
Jean, just a thought for the group. I thought these issues were addressed somewhere else, but I just scanned the survey pretty quickly and they're not really. So what if there was like a follow-up to 3 and something about, because this has to do with aging, what do you see as barriers to remaining, in your current residence or in Upton as you age? And then, perhaps we can list, this would be specific to elderly populations, because I think at the first meeting, we all mentioned people in this community that we know that have, issues, because, it's like Parkinson's or, mobility site issues. So I think that is a valuable follow-up to that question, Jean. Again, I thought it was mentioned somewhere else, but it's kind of scattered.
Emily pulled up question 7, and transportation is in there. I'm almost feeling like it needs to be one question on its own, but it's here in question 7. So I think my concern is partially addressed.
Yeah, but I think it's still worth it, because I think, we all have our reasons for being involved in this, but I think one of, my reasons was because seniors do have a hard time staying in Upton, and cost is only one factor. I think, availability of assisted living is another. I think that single, and I think they're scattered. I think I would like to see them specifically for the elderly population all in one neat question, maybe following, would you want to remain in Upton as you age? And if yes, what barriers would there be, and specifically only to the elderly population?
Chairman Steve, can you explain to me why assistance or protection from eviction is in there? Are you proposing that the town somehow supersede state law and the housing court? You're going to offer assistance to people in town from being evicted? You're going to pay them from the trust, from the selectmen trust? You have 100% discretion? What is that doing in there?
I think you raised that very same point to answer your first question. I cannot answer and raise any validity to that, but that may be a situation. So Gene, your concern, I think really we look at the word mobility, and that's a big word, right? And it's an expounding situation, right? With elderly folks, and again, trying to get around town. So again, I like that question that we were going over, question 3 as it is. But if we take question 7, as Alan has raised, strike the eviction box out of that question, and let's put mobility and, Gene, you can craft something that you think may work in that stead, and we'll put it in there, and that will kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We can get rid of assistance or protection from eviction, and on this particular support service, we can address that mobility issue. Also, if we look forward to question 11, and I really want to take it in order, but the only reason that we're going to jump around here for a minute is Emily has raised question 7, but also question 7 mentions, please rate the desirability of the following housing types in Upton. At the very bottom, accessible housing for people with disabilities. Again, maybe we can craft that word mobility in there as well. And
why don't we just take out with disabilities and make it accessible housing? Because whether or not you have a disability or you have a mobility or it's a transportation, the word is accessible is very broad, and it's used in real estate very broad for a reason. Because whether it's visual, spatial, transportation, we just put accessible. And you're right, Steve, kills a bunch of birds, but let's just pare it down.
Okay.
I agree, Laura. So I don't like all this killing of birds, but
me neither, but just
Yeah.
So do we take out assistance of or protection from? You're right. I mean, there's nothing the town can do, and you don't want people leading them down the path thinking, "Oh, good, the town's gonna."
Or there's a resource.
Yeah.
I apologize.
7-figure fund that they have 100% discretion on. When I was a select, we had somebody request money to redo their roof. The thought process was if there was equity at home, that isn't something for the town to do. You're not going to be able to have a restriction if you're talking about that the taxpayers are going to fund somebody who's going to be evicted from the town. I think the only resource would be if the selectmen for some reason felt that it was an unjust or something to use that selectman discretionary fund. But you're not going to supersede state law. I'm not quite sure exactly what you're even offering. I guess I'd ask, I apologize, the person in the upper left corner, what exactly do towns, if they've ever passed that, what do they provide for assistance and protection? Town council to help these people in the housing court, or what? Or do they pay their rent for these people?
I think getting rid of rental assistance and also getting rid of assistance or protection from eviction would be more useful.
Well, excuse, I have, first of all, I have to apologize for getting sidetracked, Steve. I didn't mean to make us go out of order. I think, addressing the questions one by one makes sense. And I shouldn't have, again, I apologize for, bringing in a subject that I could address at some later time. I don't want to get us into a broad discussion when we can dispense with one question at a time if we can. But all the comments that everybody's making are great. It's just, I devolved and I apologize for that.
So we should go back to question 4 we were on and then.
Question 3.
I think, no, very good, Gene. No, I have thick skin, don't worry. Yeah, if we're good with 3, I'd like to just kind of, as long as you think elsewhere in the survey that we can, get that correct point across that you're trying to make, I think we're good. But if we're good with 3, I'd just like to try to keep moving in order. Because again, Alan's got a great point with 7. But again, it's going to be important as a committee if we make sure that we're all in agreement and we can scratch that particular question or option out of the question.
Before we close out of 3, just a question with that. Second to last bullet says meets my needs. Would it benefit at all saying meets my financial or mobility needs, or trying to just see if we can, that needs can be broad and someone could infer that needs is also my need for moving around and I want one level because I don't want to have to worry about going upstairs. That's that mobility need is present, have always heard about that as it relates to providing senior housing. And I don't mean, I mean just for people to age in place. So I agree with Gene saying having something that pulls across mobility and getting at that. I want to stay in Upton, but that's my concern. Is there suitable housing that is available to address my mobility needs? That's right. That can be a distinction.
I think as Laura said, the word I think is accessibility.
Yeah.
I think that you would add, if you want to that 4th question, whether my needs are financial or accessibility or other.
Right.
I like that.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay, so that, I think that gives us an opportunity to kind of tidy up that. The question looks very comprehensive, but that gives us an opportunity to really kind of dot all the I's. So if that's good with everybody, we can go with Joe's suggestion.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. We'll move on to question 4.
All right, question 4 was asking about if you were to consider moving out of Upton, which of the following factors would drive your decision to move? I forget, was this one we wanted to have as select all that apply or select your top 3?
I don't think we didn't weigh in on that. I don't believe.
Oh, okay. It might have been a different question. We discussed that.
I like all that apply for actually all of these.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, I think I'm good with all that apply.
Okay.
All that apply.
And this is another one that mentions public transportation.
What's the relevance of wanting to move to an area that has better healthcare facilities? What are we going to do in Upton to address that?
I think it only so much as it lets us know why people consider leaving. I don't know as if we can, we certainly can't compete with, let's just say, some of the Boston healthcare facilities.
We have no healthcare facilities.
That's right.
It's pretty excuse me, we have a dentist.
No, so Alan, I think that one of the things here is as Joe had said earlier, is kind of direct how the town develops. It's part of whether it's the EDC's mission to try and attract public, some sort of thing like what's happened at Plummer's Corner, at the Osterman Development Project, where there are a lot of, satellite operations of Milford Hospital. I think particularly like occupational therapy, Upton has several commercially or mixed use zones where occupational therapy would be an excellent use. So I do think that, having that in here is not a bad thing. And because it will direct, the work of the EDC, the work of the planning board, the work of, ZBA in specific cases. So I think it crosses a lot of different goals for the community. So if we can do it, and it becomes up, and this comes up as a high priority for people, I think there are things that can be done broadly in the community to help us, fulfill that need if it's identified.
I think the one good thing about Upton's location is that you're not too far from Worcester for healthcare or Boston for healthcare. So even though it's not in Upton, it's close.
Okay, so it sounds like we're pretty comfortable with this question.
I am.
Okay.
Looks good.
We're good, all that apply works, and we're good with the rest of the verbiage and the questions, the answers, all that looks good to everybody?
Yep.
Great. All right, number 5, this is the section where we're getting into housing affordability. Are you comfortably able to afford your home and associated housing costs? I don't believe I made any changes to this question. This is the same as it was. Folks feel okay with this question still?
I am.
That looks fine.
Yeah,
All right.
looks good, Emily.
Excellent. Number 6 is more than 30% of your monthly income dedicated to paying for housing each month.
I think that's a good question. I'm good with it.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
I am too.
There was the question in here that I removed. It was asking about if an emergency expense was to come up, how would you be able to afford it? So I took that question out. We seemed pretty divided on it. So I think the first 2 questions here really capture what we're getting, what we're looking for when we ask about affordability. So I didn't really feel that that third question was really necessary. And we were trying to pare down the survey anyway to keep it a little shorter for people.
Okay. That was the old question 8. So the old question 8 is gone.
Yeah. And now we arrive at 7. So we continue our discussion on 7. Yeah, so I'm fine removing assistance or protection from eviction. I would like to keep rental assistance in there because there are programs out there that the town could apply for that would provide rental assistance. For example, Community Preservation Act, CPA funds, one of them can actually provide rental assistance. I found that out during the beginning of COVID when people were struggling. But that is something that is covered under that. So I would like to keep that one in, but I'm fine taking out the eviction one. And did we want to replace it with a mobility?
I think that above it in transportation, I think transportation is too general. So we could do that as transportation assistance because that addresses the mobility issue. And, it's like a council on aging van. So transportation assistance, if we use that language, maybe that works because transportation here, what does it mean? It's like the generic transportation really doesn't say anything. It's like support services, but transportation assistance, I think, is very concise and direct.
Yeah, it would almost imply like public transportation, which of course we don't have in Upton. So, right. Okay.
So our question, when we had the first one, why are you limiting tax relief to seniors and veterans? Why don't you offer it maybe to people who are disabled or people who honestly just don't make enough money and the, whatever the taxes are, whatever, cripple them and they can't afford it financially. So why is it just for seniors and veterans?
So we could say,
I would say tax relief. Are you looking, with tax relief maybe help you to maintain residents in the town?
do you think there's another word that we could add to keep that relatively brief, but capture a different demographic that we've missed? If we were to say
I was gonna say, I'd agree with Alan for tax relief because I sell houses and I've sold, 30-something-year-olds houses because 5 years ago they could afford the taxes and now they can't. And I've also sold elderly houses because they can't afford the taxes. So I think if we leave tax relief and take out for seniors and veterans.
So one of the things, there's existing programs for tax relief for seniors and veterans that, really not a lot of people know about, but that's where some of the other things like rental assistance come into play. The one thing about tax relief is that you can be in every single tax bracket and click that off as far as, yes, of course. Yes, I can afford it, but I'd love relief. How do we gauge that? Because that every single person could conceivably tick that off. I'd love it in Bridge if I didn't pay as much taxes,
Right.
but that's not gonna. That's if out of these would I I'd tick it off, but I wouldn't necessarily be say a low income person or someone with disabilities that then maybe has that unique challenge. So for rental assistance and even for assistance or protection from eviction, some towns do within their social services departments provide that level of service. Last town I came from, Littleton, only 10,000 people. They did that. They had a specific need. Most of those were actually disabled or seniors. That was the population they were serving, and those were actually some of the ones that were at risk for eviction or even foreclosure. So it is possible to have that type of program, and provide assistance. But one of the things is, just like we had that question about transportation, because it's a little bit more focused. If we just have it as tax relief, we want to try to see if we can narrow it down some, because otherwise 100% of the people responding could tick off tax relief.
So do we, instead of seniors and veterans, do we change it for people in need?
Well, I mean, just
You
to,
may need tax relief because your child has cancer.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
to follow up with what Joe said is, and I don't know if this has to do with what the state allows or what, if it's just the process. Like Mendon, I think just passed, there's a name for it, for seniors, that basically if you're a senior and you meet certain, eligibility standards, then you're eligible for tax relief. You have to have lived in town for a certain amount of time. You have to have a certain amount of income. And a lot of towns have that. And I've sort of been tracking that because it does seem like something that, that Upton could use. And I think they have this is a similar program for veterans. But I have never heard of it for just regular residents, no matter how much in need or no matter what circumstances they face. So I don't know. I think the practice is to look at, was it called the circuit breaker or something like that for seniors? I think is what they called it in Mendon. I knew it would come to me. But, so that's something that's just done. And that's an option that's on the table. It's been done in other places. The other ones, I don't know if we can even do that and be in compliance with state law. And Joe would, I seriously don't know. And I don't know how to gauge it. I don't know if we go look at what the value of someone's house is, and if they're, that just gets really complicated because need is pretty subjective.
Just going back to what Joe said, Joe, don't we already have this written into the real estate tax issue, code in Upton, that there's relief for seniors and veterans? I thought there was some sort of, or is that state law?
State law allows it, and we do have senior tax work off. I believe we also have veteran, but you are able to expand. Some towns will have senior tax work off, specifically if you meet certain income requirements. Other towns will have senior tax, and they don't have a income limit. So that any senior over, if you want to identify over 60, could then qualify for senior tax work off.
So that kind of just gets to my point, which is we already do it.
Well, that one only is if you're able to work for the town. You know, people volunteer at town hall, they volunteer at the senior center, they volunteer at the library, and you get a certain break on your taxes. Instead of pay, you get break on your taxes. So, and I don't know, like just, you know, but it isn't available to anybody. So for example, if you're homebound, you're not eligible for it. You have to be able to work.
So if I can just clean up a few things. We do have senior work off, but as you mentioned, Catherine, you actually have to, as you mentioned, you have to actually go and work those hours. And it's up to $1,500. And we recently changed the bylaw and it's now veterans work off as well. So we have both seniors and veteran. And a few years ago, in conjunction with the Tracy, our assessor, we tried to implement something similar to what everyone has described. There was a problem with, there's an income threshold that's ultimately so low that it doesn't allow seniors, seniors in Upton to actually qualify for it. So it's almost like it's a feel-good policy, but it catches or captures such a infinitely small portion of your population that it doesn't do what you're really wanting to achieve. So anyways, I think these are all good points, but coming back full circle, kind of trying to get back on topic with this specific question, I think Laura mentioned it. In our rough draft, we had tax relief. Emily's revision now is tax relief for seniors and veterans. So if there's another word that we could plug in there that kind of captures everything that we're trying to say, is it, I don't want to say low income or income challenged or what, is there another demographic or another word that we can plug in that would clean up that first box? And then again, transportation assistance, we can clean up that box. And then, we pretty much have a good grip on what we want to get out of question 7.
How about for eligible populations?
That's very general, but also very good.
It sounds good.
Alan, Jean, what are your thoughts? You both had a feeling on this. You're kind of coming at it from different directions.
The issue that I have is like there's issues of like extreme need. Right? That's one issue, and then there's official issues around affordability. If a home isn't affordable and never will be, then offering tax relief doesn't address the underlying issue. It's just too big a hurdle. Taxes are a portion of what you pay out, but if your taxes are relatively, they are major, but they're in the grand scheme of things and your overall expenses. I just don't want to create a situation where you're somehow promising, as Alan alludes to, that anybody that can't afford a home is going to get their current home is going to get assistance from the community. That's not possible, and it's not responsible. So I guess it's like eligibility is one thing, but eligibility is so generic and difficult to ascertain for anybody that's in the governing body. And who's going to make the decision, as Alan has pointed out. Who makes that decision? So I guess in cases of extreme need, I think that it's like that's I'm comfortable with, but one time. But if you offer long-term tax assistance to a home that is basically unaffordable, that's not really doing anything, and it's not encouraging turnover of the real estate to people that can't afford the home.
Okay, I think Paul had his hand up. Paul, do you have anything that you can kind of help us clean this up or help us find some common ground?
Well, no, I think these are all valid points, and I guess I feel slightly liberated because it's my last meeting with the group, and now, no, but in all honesty, I think I understand what some of the thoughts and concerns are, but I'll just point out that I mean, I don't interpret this as we're saying that the town is going to do these things. For example, just in larger communities or community development corporations, there are nonprofit housing operations. Maybe that's more of a Worcester thing, let's say, but those other things out there aren't. I don't interpret this, and maybe that's what we need to refine it. But I don't interpret this as saying, oh, the town of Upton is going to provide all of these things. I think the goal, and we need to be, wordsmith it properly, but try to identify the need, and then we can figure out the solution. You know what I mean? So at the same time, if we think folks are going to get, hung up on some of that, then let's just make it as simple as probably better at that point.
Maybe
I would also, if I could just throw something out, I would read that question. And if you're attracting, let's say you're attracting a family and they're going to move into an over 55, but when they see that first box, that looks like a transition, right? It doesn't mean we can necessarily achieve it, but it means that somebody could look at this question and say, okay, Upton's looking to kind of invite me in as a 55-year-old and also help me transition into being a 75, 80, and so on year old. So, I think sometimes people can read a question differently. I just don't know, we're putting a lot of thought into that one box, and the reality is, people may skip right over it. So I guess the question is, what's the best way to modify that everybody's happy?
for the rental assistance, maybe if we change it to counseling on rental assistance, because I know other towns will have people, parts of the town will help people apply for Section 8 or other programs. So it's not really the program itself, but the help to get the applications.
Who's going to be responsible for that? The town manager?
I
A lot of towns will provide rental assistance and programs through a social services. No, just as far as financial, or they'll work because they have a network of people that can consult with them. So basically match them up. Town won't have an attorney, but they may have, through another organization, other connections, resources that then they can match them up. So like you said, we don't need to have all those things in town. And very often when towns, and we have a social services department here, we're just matching up with other resources, other agencies, like what Paul said, that then provide that assistance.
Right.
I was gonna say,
again, I think
my opinion would be, I'd agree with Paul. We're not offering to provide all of this. It's a survey to find out what would keep you in town, prevent you from leaving, or make town more attractive to you.
That's right. Yeah.
We're not flat out saying we're gonna do any of this, but in order to maybe develop the type of housing we need, what are people looking for?
right.
I agree.
So again, just trying to get back to, we kind of have two of these boxes. We're trying to clean those up, and then we can kind of talk about that rental assistance. But getting back to that first box, tax relief for seniors and veterans. What is the best way to capture the last 15 minutes of debate here that we think is going to incorporate everybody's idea? Just to kind of clean up that box. We clean up transportation and assistance, and then we can talk about the rental box. But what can we do about that first one that so we can kind of put it in the rearview mirror? Catherine, I think you mentioned eligible population.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest we either leave it the way it is or put eligible populations, because if we put tax relief, everyone's going to check it off and it won't mean anything. So, yeah.
All
So
right, and
maybe
then Alan, it said you didn't really like it the way it was written. Is there a word or 2 or 3 words that we can plug into that and make it?
Seniors and veterans, just put tax relief.
You think just tax relief, which is how it was on the draft. But again, it's been, I think we corrected it for this second draft. What are the thoughts? Gene, did you have a third idea of what you wanted to do with that one box, or are we?
Certain veterans get a pension. So honestly, no disrespect to somebody that fought for the country, but isn't tax relief because of financial issue? So you might be actually giving tax relief to somebody who is making 60, 80 or more, 100,000 a year because of what level they were in the service. That's not the purpose of tax relief. I assume it's for people who can't afford to live within the community.
we could
So-
change it to eligible seniors and veterans, because the way it's structured in other communities is you do have to be eligible. If you're a 90-year-old millionaire, you don't get tax relief. You have to make under a certain amount, you know, there's steps, so we can put eligible seniors and veterans.
Why don't we change, instead of seniors and veterans, just put for eligible persons?
Yeah, eligible persons, eligible populations, I'm comfortable with that.
Me too.
Okay, so we're gonna strike seniors and veterans and put for eligible population, for eligible residents,
Okay, good. Good.
okay? Eligible residents,
I really like that, Steve. That's
Okay.
You
excellent.
said persons.
we're gonna strike it.
Instead of persons.
We strike it as you had mentioned, so we're gonna strike those 2 words. Emily, does that? you
Yeah,
can't do
that sounds
can't do
great
that
to
in
me.
Real time, can you?
What's that?
You can't do that in real time so we can see that, can you? Do you have the ability to?
Not
Copy
in the
and
way that I
paste.
have it, not in the way that I have it opened right now.
Okay,
But I will make those changes.
okay. Okay,
And then
And-
there was a comment about counseling on rental assistance. How do folks feel about that?
Christine had mentioned a change to that. I didn't, because we beat up the other 2, I kind of lost track of where we were with that particular option.
Okay, counseling to apply for rental assistance. Because
Okay.
other towns like Hopedale, Milford, Worcester, they all have programs that will help people apply for like Section 8 or other programs.
And again, I think it's important for us to all realize these aren't things that we're gonna necessarily be able to achieve or are looking to achieve, but we're trying to get an idea of, you know, what is it that's gonna make people choose Upton, or what is it that's gonna make people leave Upton?
Are you proposing to leave in assistance with protection from eviction?
No, we're striking that.
Okay, thank you.
We got that one already. Right, Emily?
Correct.
All right, so we've
Correct.
already scratched assistance or protection from eviction. We've cleaned up the first box. Transportation has assistance with it. And Christine has a very good modification for the rental assistance option.
Right.
Everybody, Catherine, Jean, everybody's good with Christine's recommendation?
Just
I'm
add the
fine
word
with it.
counseling.
Yeah.
Council.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else with this question, or shall we move to number 8?
8's good.
I had also changed the phrasing of the question, I believe, from the previous draft. I just want to double check that the actual question itself is okay with folks. So we're saying, which of the following housing support services would be the biggest factor in helping you stay in your home? How does that sound?
Sounds good.
I think it
Okay.
sounds good.
Yep.
All right, perfect.
Now, Emily, your first draft was which of the following financial and support services for housing, right? That was
think
how the
so.
original draft was?
Think so, yeah.
Okay,
I like this one better.
so everybody likes this one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just one quick question. Do you want to put like, check all that apply, seeing we have that on all the others? Or top 3 or something, or do we want to leave it to people to make up?
Just leave it.
Okay, I'm fine.
Yeah, I would say probably leave it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think you can do not currently need any support services and check all the other boxes.
Okay, yeah.
So
Okay.
I think it's 1 or the other 6 or 7, whatever's there. 3, 6, I don't even know.
It's 1 to 8.
Okay.
I have an issue. I have an issue with 8 where it says single adults. I think we can take out in need, those in recovery, veterans, survivors, etc. There are an awful lot of people that get divorced that can't stay in town because there's no ability for them to find housing. And I think in need, I don't think we need any of that. I just think single adults.
I agree.
I
Okay,
agree
so-
also.
Okay, so you'd like to scratch everything that's in the parentheses.
After the word adult, I want to scratch everything. I want it to read single adults.
Single, okay, so scratch in need and everything in parentheses.
That's correct.
Okay. Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Me.
Thumbs up, Gene, Catherine, we're good?
I'm good.
Okay. Emily, is that, you can do that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yep.
I kind of would like some question that targets vulnerable populations such as those mentioned, because I think of single adults, like I'm a single adult versus who couldn't afford a home versus someone who's in a worse off income situation. So that's just my opinion on it.
Could we just add another box, vulnerable populations, i.e. because you can be a family and be a vulnerable, it could be a mother with 3 children who escaped an abusive situation. So what if you just added another box, vulnerable populations?
I think we could roll. I don't think we have any seasonal workers in the area.
I was thinking the same.
So maybe we could put a vulnerable population there instead of seasonal workers, because we have no farms left. So I don't think we have any. We're not Florida, we're not Texas.
Yeah. I agree with Laura.
I think, well, I like the idea of vulnerable populations. I think it's a social need that, that can be translated into, zoning and other type of actions.
Okay, so we're thinking that we want to use that in place of the question or the option for seasonal workers?
Yes.
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 All right,
I think we could look long and hard and never find a seasonal worker.
I see 1 or 2 at Kelly's. Okay, all right, so we're good with that change. Everything else on number 8, are we good with the rest of it?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, Emily.
All right, then we're moving forward with the desirability question. I don't think I made any changes to this other than adding small single level homes to it, to the options.
Luxury medium sized. Where would that read? At the very bottom, Emily?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Tiny homes, okay, small single level.
The single level homes. Yeah, it could be small to medium sized single level homes, or just single level homes, I guess.
Okay. I think maybe there's nothing in here about accessory dwelling units. And aging in place, one of the bigger trends in the oh, it is there. Okay, never mind.
There you go. I was like, I know I put it in.
Yeah. I didn't see it at first. Yep.
Just rolled off the screen. Okay, I think you've captured, it looks to me like every type of housing option there, so it's good with me.
I'm fine.
Anybody
Yep,
see
looks
anything?
good. Nope, it looks good.
We don't have public housing of any kind, do we?
Small scale apartment, I guess only.
Large scale.
Yeah, we got larger scale apartments.
But public housing could just be a duplex.
I think public housing as it would be a specific definition, wouldn't it? I mean, it's like a.
Yeah.
It's inferred assistance.
Yeah.
I think if we got rid of tiny homes and put in public housing.
Tiny homes, I think, is important. My daughter was looking at tiny home regs in Upton because that's what she wanted to do. So I think that's a big thing with younger people. I mean, that's just one person that was looking at it, but I saw that. I was very happy it was included.
Young people and older people both look at it, but they're just not allowed in Upton.
Right. And
They duplexes, which makes me nuts.
yeah. You know, I think tiny house is a good thing to have in there.
Yeah, I think public housing is not a bad thing to have in there too.
Does anyone know the legal definition of public housing? Emily, Gabe, is there a legal definition of public housing?
I think it's just
So-
housing that's subsidized by a public
Yeah,
agency.
Yeah, I mean, that's where that ends up being hard because you'd want to explain it, because I guarantee we put public housing and just have that as a title, everyone is going to put, not desirable.
Exactly.
And we
Right.
sort of get there with the in-need populations. Very often, when it is public housing, it's specifically for really low income seniors, people, with disabilities, and that it is a, it essentially is a government run building.
But
So is
but isn't that that's one of the options for CPA funds is, affordable housing trust owned units. So isn't that by definition public housing?
it's just for a survey, how would we want to define it so that people don't view it as a 100-unit building that then is just viewed as a HUD building. That's the only thing, is how can we maybe get at it by defining it, so it isn't just an automatic no.
what if you put something like subsidized housing instead of public housing, subsidized housing, then paren, duplex, and duplex, comma, apartment complex, comma, and then put some of the options.
Or assisted living consistent with the community character?
Yeah, I think with anything public housing, I think, people are going to have a negative connotation to attach to that. I mean, we can add it, but I think it's only going to, cast shadow or cast out
I
myself.
think people are gonna think, quote unquote, the projects, and they're all gonna automatically say no. I think some of the mixed use, there are housing for special populations, you could technically, those in need could be rolled into that.
Okay, I
Just a little bit
withdraw.
more politically correct, because that whole not my backyard.
I withdraw my comment. I think your comments are all excellent. I think if there are other ways to address it, I mean, the Affordable Housing Trust is working on their own, their own action plan. So I withdraw any comment I have on it.
Yeah, and with this question too, I was kind of going more for like the physical kind of styles of housing versus like the financial way it's created. So technically, I mean, we could have maybe like a tiny home village that's public housing, but it's more going for what you would feel comfortable seeing in town, how it fits with the landscape and the existing housing and businesses.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay,
All right,
so I
we
think we're
feel-
good. We're good with 9.
Excellent. All right, this one, I also changed the phrasing of the question. So I forget exactly what it was before, but it is now, which of the following issues related to housing and development do you think the town of Upton should prioritize in the next 5 years? Since this is a 5-year plan, I figured go with that.
Could this be one that's select as many as you want, or?
It should be, yeah. I can add in that phrase if it's not clear.
What was the phrase again? I'm sorry, Christine.
Select all.
Oh, okay. I think this is a good question.
Yeah,
And I
looks
added
good.
in
Does anybody see anything that we think that has been missed that we may want to add another block, or do you think we've got everything covered with what is on the screen?
Oh, I think one thing that's missing is protecting the public water supply.
Is that I mean, they do have availability of municipal water.
Yeah,
Would
but
that be-
that's not at all the same thing. Most towns have, a wellhead protection, their own wellhead protection acts, and particularly as we think about expanding water and sewer to hopefully to new businesses, the increasing amount of development in areas that are close to our, the river, or because of what's going on with the railroad, I think protecting the public water supply is forefront in a lot of people's minds.
What does that, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be in.
It's just, setbacks from, the zone 1 or zone 2 of a public
Okay.
water supply. Restricted zoning in zone 1 or zone 2 of a
Okay,
water supply area.
Okay. I'll defer to the group on that.
I don't necessarily feel strongly one way or another.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the water, sewer, I understand public drinking water is very important. I don't want to minimize the importance of it. I just don't know if, maybe everybody will check that box. So I don't know, how that will impact the survey, but I'm indifferent either way. If the group would like to add it, that's fine. If you want to leave it as written, that's fine with me as well.
I think it would be good to add it because in the news, so many different places have had trouble with their public water supplies, like Flint, Michigan, and parts of Massachusetts.
Almost every town right now is testing for PFOA.
Right.
And it's turning up in almost every public water supply. I think Upton's, because of its lack of development, has been spared a little bit of that. But I know we will be testing our water soon under DEP mandate for that particular constituent of concern. So
We already have.
Have
We
we?
already are.
Yeah. Did we get the results yet?
Yes, we are. We don't have any evidence of any PFAS.
Oh, good.
Good. It just reinforces my perspective. I mean, there are some really nightmare scenarios right now around PFAS.
I am comfortable adding that if, again, if folks want to do it.
I'm fine with adding it. It's one box.
Yeah, okay.
You're fine with adding it, so that would be, okay. Sounds like 3 or 4 people would like to add it. Yeah. One thing that's, well, of course, it's not noteworthy for the survey, but population-wise or percentage-wise, I think it's only about 35% of the town is on public water, right? There's really, percentage-wise, it's mostly wells in town. But,
Wow.
But that's probably.
There's no question, Steve, but just to give you in Westminster, Mass, there was a composting facility that now has over 100, that's affected over 100 private drinking water wells with PFAS.
Yep.
And to the point where it's emergency action, DEP's having to fund it, towns getting involved. Like I said, this is becoming a huge issue. It's the next asbestos issue.
worse than asbestos.
Okay. All right. So Emily, you're able to add that. Looks like there's plenty of room there. You can add that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll add that in.
Okay. So we're good with question 10 with that revision?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. All right. We can move on.
All right, question 11. Let me know how I did with this one. We had a lot of debate last meeting about it. And I'm happy to change anything if it doesn't reflect what you wanted. So I phrased it as, are you aware that the town of Upton has CPA funds available to be used for affordable housing? And would you be interested in learning more about the ways CPA can be used for affordable housing? I don't know if that's like a mouthful. I gave 4 options. Basically, yes, I'm aware of CPA funds and I would be interested in learning more. I'm aware, but I'm not interested. I'm not aware of CPA funds, but I would be interested in learning more. And I'm not aware of CPA funds and I'm not interested in learning more.
I think you could get rid of the last one.
Okay.
I would leave it as written, just to capture all 4 options. I don't think anybody will check it, Gene, but I think it's worthwhile leaving it in.
It's good to give everyone every possible choice.
Yeah, with me, I don't feel strongly about it.
Personally, I think it's great because I think it might get more people to say, what is that? And because people now really don't know. So I really like that question.
I like the question as it stands. I'd like to leave number 4. We can measure the level of apathy.
That's always good to know.
I don't know and I don't care. Yeah.
There's only 100 concerned citizens in the town.
Okay, so it sounds like we're good with question 11 and the 4 options with question 11. I believe that would be the end of the survey, Emily.
Survey.
Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wishful
These
thinking.
are the demographic questions. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got the age range. How long have you lived here? What best describes your current housing situation? How many people live in your household? I don't think I made any changes to any of those questions. And then the household.
Is there some reason that it's like every 5 years? Again, whoever created this, what's the significance of that?
Emily, can you hear the question?
No, I missed
Can you
it.
please retreat to the earlier question about ages?
Oh,
Right there. Yeah, right there.
So again, are these homeowners theoretically that we're looking for? Or are you going to have like an 8-year-old child, 19 and under, respond to this? But again, 20 to 24, 20 to 29, why are there 5-year intervals? Is there some purpose in that?
Would it make sense to spread those years out? Or, in theory, we always would think that it's going to be homeowners that are going to be answering this survey. But the reality is, we don't know. Would high school students answer it? Would college graduates? I don't
I
know.
might not even want my minor child even responding to this. But again, I'm not quite sure what the relevance is. Why is it 5 years? Normally you see this, it's like 10 to 15-year periods or so. What's the significance of every 5 years?
I thought we discussed that at the last meeting, and the reason for that is because it's consistent with census data, and so it allows, I could be wrong, but I thought it helped, sort of when it comes down for programs and possible grants and stuff, it helped, get the information that we got, make it more consistent with the funding sources and the.
In theory, we could take, for instance, the first 3. We could say 19 to 29. Then we could go 30 to 39. So we could eliminate every other line essentially what Alan's suggesting, we could eliminate every other line, but just cinching up those timelines or expanding them, I should say. So does that make more sense again for the purpose of our survey? Is that something, that's fine with me? I think it's a good idea. I think the reality is, ultimately, most people that are going to be answering this are going to be 40 plus years old. I just don't know if we're going to get a lot of respondents that are even in the 35 to 39 bracket, but that's just my, gut feeling, but.
Yeah, I would think every 10 years versus every 4.
Okay.
And I don't think minors should be basically solicited
Yeah.
for 19 years and under, because it's going to skew what the earnings are and probably other aspects that are going to be important for us to make decisions.
Okay. So let's just say then hypothetically, we could go 20 to 34. Oh wait, we're thinking every 10 years, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and so on.
Yeah, and that's,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
What is the age of being an adult? I mean, isn't it 18?
Yeah.
You can vote.
You can vote at 18.
Yeah,
Can't drink till you're 21, so I
Can't
don't
drink
know.
till you're 21.
yeah, but you
But you
can,
can get drafted at 18, so I don't know.
yeah, I was
That's a
gonna
tricky
say, you can
question
serve in
there,
the
Kathy.
That's where-
military, yeah.
Technically, someone could be renting in town,
Yeah.
but then is 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
I think the consolidating down from 19 and under, 20 to 29, and keeping that probably does enough. I understand why they do it in 5-year increments, because that matches how the data for US Census is then tabulated. But you can sort of just do the aggregate. If we needed to refer to the US Census data, we can group things together in 10-year increments to then at least match out.
So I'm not quite sure the relevance of an 18, excuse me, a 17-year-old, 16, 15, they can't vote. So again, they're minor.
So then you do 18, 19. I mean, it's for simplicity, just say 19 and under. I mean, you're not going to get that many, but it's a legitimate age group that's defined by US Census. And that's one of the things that we very often try to do in these things, is make sure that we can then align some of these facts with the general US Census data that CMRPC may use for the demographic chapters of the housing plan.
When they do the US data survey, are they looking for opinions of people? I mean, if this you're looking for opinions and how you're going to potentially change, the bylaws and the building code. So potentially then I guess you're soliciting minors to offer.
As someone who's done surveys in other towns before, I mean, I've done master plan surveys in other towns, and we've gotten like pretty good feedback from minors. I mean, it's not illegal for a minor to fill out a survey. And I think like that I don't really see the problem. I mean, if a minor wants to fill out the survey, it should be reflected accurately that they're a minor. We can't like bar them from filling out the survey. And in the past, just with survey design I've done, like we've distributed the survey through the schools, mainly to get parents, but we have had children and mostly teenagers fill out surveys on like street design and that sort of thing, and gotten good feedback that honestly was not terribly different from what the other age cohorts were putting in. I mean, I think we risk having inaccurate data if we like don't have the under option, because then if a 17-year-old is filling out the survey, are they going to mark themselves as a 20-year-old? I mean, then that's inaccurate data. I mean, just, yeah.
So I guess my question is, do we want to take, ultimately, right, it's going to be a decision of the committee. Do we want to take 19 and run that up to 29? Do we want to keep the 19 years and under?
18
to 29.
Is 18.
Okay, so you want to,
18 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49. One more question. Will somebody be able to vote only once on their computer with this? Will there be some restriction, or can somebody who's not busy on a Friday afternoon, maybe do 10, 20, or 30 of them? Can you tell me that?
So,
I'm gonna be that person.
first, at least as technical support, I would encourage the committee to keep the 19 and under. On the second, it is a survey, it doesn't require you to register and create a profile that then limits you. So yes, someone can do it multiple times.
Thank you.
You just filled your Friday afternoon, right?
I think a couple Friday afternoons.
It'll limit you for what device you're taking it on too. So if you're on a laptop, you would have to take it on like an iPad or a phone if you're going to take it multiple times.
Okay. All right, so Gabe would like to see it, Joe, you'd like to see it included. So if we leave 19 years and under and we group the 20 through 29, go every 10 years on the other age options, I guess the only difference would be the 75, we'll go 75 through 80. No, let's see, 70 to 79, 80.
Why don't you just say 70 and above?
Well, I was gonna say, just looking the way the numbers are gonna play out, where you go 70 to 79 and then go 80 years or over.
Yeah.
That would really
Yeah.
simplify. We'll keep the 19 years and under, we'll go 80 and over, and that nicely will just line up our numbers. You know, our age brackets.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Yep.
that sounds good. So Emily will go 20 to 29, 30 to 39, so on and so forth to 79, and then 80 years or over. Catherine, Jean, I don't see a hand raised, so no problem with that. Does that
No.
work?
No, I think that works for me.
Okay.
Yeah, the only, I just had and it may not be, I was waiting for Joe to say something because I thought that the whole issue had to do with census data, but I think I heard him say that that can be tweaked later on, so I'm comfortable with it going the way it is.
Okay, so you're good. So we're good with that. Paul, did I see you raise your hand?
I just wanted to, not to put Emily or Gabe on the spot. How much will altering these categories affect your ability to massage the data?
It should be fine combining them.
Okay.
But I will double check with the census to see how it lines up. But I feel okay about combining the middle age categories.
Yeah. So as long my recommendation would be as long as you can do that, then I would defer to the board's suggestions here.
Yeah. That's where I was going. Thanks, Paul.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we're good. Emily, you've got what the wishes of the board, so we should be able to move on to question 13. We're good with that?
Sure.
Yeah, it's
It's a little tight on its timelines are a little bit tight, but I think we're good with that.
Okay.
I don't see any hands raised, so we're good with that. I think we could follow
Yes.
14.
I'm with 14.
Are we good with that?
Yep.
I'm just curious who's going to answer the fourth one.
Oh, those are 18. Girls taking it.
Alan, hold on now. I've got a suggestion. You're gonna fill this out 10 times. I suggest you check that box at least once. Just a suggestion. All right. Are we good? We good with that one?
Yep.
Catherine, Eugene, everybody saying good? All right.
Yes.
Go ahead, Emily. Numbers in the household, that's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Yep.
People currently live, or did I say members? Or numbers, one or the other?
We know what you meant. And then we're at the infamous 16.
Okay. Can we get a look at 16?
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought there was a comment on 15. This one I changed up a little bit, added the 150 to 200 bracket and then the more than 200. that's what it says in the census, so I lined it up with that and what we had talked about at the last meeting. And then I really made sure these brackets lined up with the census and with how low-income housing brackets are set up. So what you qualify, what you need to earn in order to qualify for low-income housing. Because that's something I'm going to use this question and the one before with the households to see, get an estimate of out of who's taking this survey, how many people would actually qualify for affordable housing.
Okay.
So I would like to keep these brackets as they are.
Okay. It looks good to me. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Or are we good with question number 16?
I think the brackets look fine.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Good.
Good.
Okay. Excellent.
All right, Emily, you can go to 17.
Oh, is someone joining? Is there anything else you would like to add regarding residential housing needs in Upton? Just a general question. People have can add any comments. And then if they want to stay involved, they have the option to add their name and email address, which is helpful to have on hand in case we need it later down the line with other public outreach or anything like that.
Okay.
Both are appropriate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then just the final question, little paragraph here. Just letting people know that there will be a community forum held, and if they have any other interest, they can visit. I put in the Housing Production Plan Steering Committee page on the town website.
Chairperson or co-chairperson Steve, could I just suggest putting one word community in the second paragraph in between the word further, and you can put the word community, further community input.
Oh, in front of community. So after the exclamation point.
To seek further community input on preferred housing styles.
After 2023 to seek
Ah,
further
yes.
community. Add the word
After further,
community
put the word
between.
community input.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Plan for early 2023 to seek further community input on preferred housing styles and locations. And so on. Okay.
All right, got it.
Emily, you got that?
Got it. Yep. All right, and we have reached the end here. So do we feel good about this? Do we want to vote on it to approve the survey?
Sure.
It looks great to me.
Yep.
I think we've made a lot of input. We've done some good give and take there amongst the community, or I should say the committee. So if we're ready, if someone would like to motion that we accept it.
Motion to accept the survey with the recommended or requested changes.
I second.
Second. Okay, we'll go to a roll call vote. I'll start with the members on screen. Catherine,
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
Alan,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. So that is majority of the members. Motion carries. We never got Jane, right? Jane never made
No,
it
she
to the
never
meeting? Okay. All right, very good. We're on to the next agenda item. Discuss strategies for promotion of the community survey. So.
I have
I think-
an opinion versus just sending it out to residents. I'd like to make sure it's available to our teachers, our fire, our police, our DPW, because these are the people that work in town but can't afford to live in town. And I'd like to know why they can't, what are they looking for to get here? Because we have a huge retention problem with our fire, police, and teachers.
In addition, why don't you have copies in stores in town that people can just pick up, whether it's the Country Super, the gas stations,
That's a great
honey
idea.
farms, the post office. If you're looking for people, maybe you're coming through town, maybe that might interest them to consider the town.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think we'd be
it's a
very
lot of traffic,
exclusive
right?
just to do, the people who are here. I memean, they're here because they can afford it. And I think there's an awful lot of people that, especially our, the younger teachers, fire, police, DPW, et cetera.
I would
Yeah,
put them,
so-
at the, I would also put them at the library, and they can be given out with every book that's lent out by the library.
That's a good idea.
So one of the things, I totally agree. I mean, one of the things is that it may be at some of the local businesses, may be hard to give them all individual copies of the full survey, but we can easily have a poster with a QR code so that if they're standing in line at the Country Super, they can basically do it on their phone, and people are used to doing that. I mean, heck, now that's how you get half the stuff, even directions for how to use your air conditioners. Now people are using QR code to register. So that was one of the thoughts, was to put some posters around some of the local businesses to encourage that. Absolutely have hard copies available both at the center, library, town hall, even giving a copy of the poster to the churches and religious.
That's great. And I think on the bottom of the poster, Joe, if we could put hard copies available at, so that if you didn't want to do the QR code, but you wanted one, you were interested, you knew where to find one.
Would that be in addition to hard copies? Because I have some clients that pay by the minute on their phone, and I'm not sure they're gonna, no offense, waste their minutes to participate in the survey.
The QR code, it's funny now, I'm stubborn to that notion myself, but now a lot of restaurants now are actually showing you, that's how you view the menu. Even the beer selection or something like that, you actually have to use that QR code.
And I think Alan Joe said that we'd make a poster with a QR code, make hard copies available, but also direct them to the town hall or the library where there'd be larger stacks.
Sure. For a small business, if, I don't know if we're allowed to put them in the post office or something like that, but there may be, whatever we delegate as suitable options, right?
Yeah, and that's where the other things we need to be able to identify, like where you can drop them off as well, and we'll have a place here. Again, the center, the library, as for people that can drop things off, even can have police station accept location as a location as well. So
At least, yeah, that's good.
do that.
Good idea.
I just want to raise an issue real quickly. It's probably nothing, but the whole Upton housing needs survey is predicated upon living in Upton. I fully agree with everything Laura said. And I don't want to reopen the survey again, please. I don't want to reopen the survey again. But we may want to rephrase the opening question to be away from, what influenced your decision to live in Upton, to make it more open to people that don't live in Upton but want to live in Upton. Because again, right now, everything in this survey assumes you live in Upton.
Yeah, agreed. Or there's one question about asking how long you've lived here. Maybe there's an option. I do not live here now, but I am interested in moving to Upton, or I work here, something like that.
Yeah, and in other surveys I've done, we've asked basically check all that apply. Like I live here, and then I work or volunteer here. So that that could be someone who goes to church here but maybe doesn't live here. I think we could rephrase some of the questions to make it more open-ended in that respect. And I think on the residency length question, just modify that slightly to say I don't live here. I don't currently live in Upton, because you could also pull in people maybe who had to leave Upton. Maybe they still have friends here, but they had to move elsewhere because they couldn't. We could get the people who can't afford their home. And I've already had that happen to them.
Yeah. And I think,
Now,
as
Dave-
Laura said, these are the people we really want to get.
Okay, I think, since I guess to do this properly, is there a way, when someone clicks on the QR code, or is there a way in the opening comment? I know we've already kind of voted to accept the opening comment. Is that something we want to have, just a kind of an obligatory opening comment? Do you live in Upton currently or not? Just a simple yes, no? Is that what you were thinking, Catherine?
I was thinking of just making it clear, it doesn't just apply to Upton people, so that would be one way of doing it.
Why? Isn't the idea also to see what entices people who maybe aren't here to
Oh,
come
yeah.
to?
Well, see, when I look at what's on the screen right now, when I look at that, I don't see that as excluding someone who doesn't live in town.
No, but the language, like Upton Housing Needs Survey, the first question is, which of the following attributes were most influential in your decision to reside in Upton?
Right, but that's going back into the survey. Do we
Right.
want to modify the survey or just have an opening question?
Just maybe we could have an opening question, or as Trevor said, you can soften it to reside in Upton, or, you know, to consider Upton your I don't know. I don't care. It's just right now, the survey itself, the questions don't apply to people that don't live here currently. That's all. And if we think that's okay, and we think that firefighters will answer it anyway, even though that's a none of the above, or so maybe the way someone talked about it, just throwing it in, I don't live in Upton, is a way to do it, is make that an option on these questions.
I understand what you're saying, Catherine, because we'd have to almost revamp everything.
Yeah, I know.
But there's enough of these questions that say other, please specify. So if we say, are you a current resident, or would you like to be?
Yeah.
Or were you in the past?
Yeah.
And then if somebody says other, they may say, I work in town, but can't afford to live in town.
Or I used to reside in town?
Or I used to live in town and
I couldn't
I
afford to
no
stay.
longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't have X, Y, or Z. You know, we've got enough open boxes. It is very Upton geared, but I think we've got enough of the other boxes scattered throughout that somebody may or may not give their opinion without reopening
Yeah.
everything.
Right, I mean, that part of it, and I'm glad you highlighted that. If we want to send it to teachers, firefighters, and all those things, right off the bat with question one, they're saying this isn't for me.
Right.
And quite honestly, if you had a 1.A that said, if you don't live here, you know, that catches, you know, do you work?
Yes.
And, you know, if you don't live here but want to, you know, like what is there? I think there's value in that to capture, you know, we have employees that.
So perhaps we could move one down a bit and put the number one as if you don't live here, why not? Or are you interested in living here? Or
do you live in Upton? Do you want to live in Upton? Did you once, you know, and then just
something very generic, you know,
yeah.
and then, you know,
and then
Is there
leave
a way
everything
because
else?
we do have a couple of other boxes, you know, and I think those are the people we might get the comments in the boxes from.
Yeah, but just following up on what Joe said, if I got this and it said, which of the following attributes are most influential in your decision to reside in Upton, I would say it doesn't apply to me, and I wouldn't consider other as to say, well, you know, I wouldn't, I would just put it aside. I wouldn't fill it out.
Agree, but I think that's why we said instead of that being number one, that would become number two. Number one would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you prefer to live in Upton? Or something.
I think we're adding.
Yeah, I think we'd have to add one
It's a
question.
simple one. Do you live in Upton? Do you not live in Upton? Or I don't live in Upton, but I would like to.
Yes. Something.
Then
is-
they're
If you
invited
had-
to
there was
fill
a
out the
way
survey.
to achieve that question with the first mouse click. Like your ability to either QR scan it or click on the survey itself. If we had that, like, just an opening question, even before they
So
read.
why don't we put it right under introduction instead of a question? Introduction, do you live in Upton? Do you desire to live in Upton? Or whatever Joe said, because it's much more intelligent than what I'm gonna spit out of my mouth right now.
And I think
Started
we should
work early
also
today, right?
explicitly welcome everybody to fill, if it fits in, I don't know again how the data, what you need for the data, especially census information, Emily. But if we're going to include that, we should invite people to fill out the survey. And that way we can get teachers and firefighters and police officers to fill it out without tinkering with every single question in the survey. But I agree with you, Laura, is that it's good to get it out of the way right at the top, right in the front.
Introduction and then dear resident.
Yeah.
Or maybe we take out dear resident and just put that as the first question.
I think one of the hard things is just how SurveyMonkey's set up.
Oh, okay.
That may be a formatting issue that's hard to have, like an initial, unless it's basically a sorting, but then that's usually like you'll have two surveys and
Yeah.
depending on your answer, you go this way.
Well, then maybe we can just make it number one.
See, that's why I was thinking if we just had it a simple, I am a resident or I'm not a resident, you're still filling out the same questionnaire survey. However, and we're not reopening the questions, you don't have to renumber or anything, but perhaps, again, before dear resident, just a little disclaimer there, or not as, kind of an identifying question. Do you live in Upton or do you not live in Upton? As simple as that. Or does not achieve what we're trying to do? Are we trying to gauge interest in moving into town or just try to verify like the type of information we're gathering? I think kind of if we split it right at the very top, like you said, Joe, if it's a SurveyMonkey handling it, and it was a yes, no, I live in town or I don't live in town, we're still gathering all that information from somebody that doesn't live in town. It's just going to go into a different batch. So then we can kind of combine the batches later. Or it gives us an idea and we could say, I think we could use this as a tool to say, all right, here's our sample batch from residents and here's our sample batch from non-residents. So
Yeah, that's correct. We can use a filter on SurveyMonkey. So you could filter it. Everyone who's selected, yes, I'm a resident in town. We can see all their answers grouped together. So we can do that.
So we could really just modify, Joe, your original document.
That part's what I don't know about. Because you could easily just have that as a new question under this section 2 current residents, then have that question, are you a resident, are you not, and then you can filter that way. I just don't know it from a formatting standpoint with the introduction, because that then prefaces like the purpose for the whole survey. One, whether or not we want to, and two, whether or not really it would work that well with SurveyMonkey. That's the only question that
I don't understand SurveyMonkey, so
I've never tried to set up a survey with it, so I'm not sure. Gabe, Emily, Paul, do you have any experience with SurveyMonkey? Technically speaking, is there a way to do this, without adding another question?
Like a branched survey?
Yes.
Emily probably knows better. I actually don't have as much experience with SurveyMonkey as Emily.
Yeah, I honestly can't remember if you can do that in this program or if I'm getting it confused with
I think at CMR, I think Typeform is a different
Yeah.
survey program that CMRPC has used, and in Typeform it's all built around choices and it lets you do that sort of algorithm question asking. But yeah, SurveyMonkey I think is all about their sort of thing is you get really good data out of it, and it sort of builds all the graphs and stuff for you.
would there really be a reason why we just can't squeeze it in before number one, just as the initial question, just to do you reside? in Upton, yes or no, and we can continue on.
Okay, so I think what we should do is we'll get the committee's input. If the committee's good with it, if everybody's okay with it, we'll kind of reopen the survey, we'll insert that question, and we'll just maybe just motion that one question. If everybody's good with doing it that way.
I just have one more question for Emily. If we start getting information from people, data, income, all that type of stuff from people that don't live in Upton, does that influence your ability to crunch data to see what people in Upton have, what the economic and status is of people in Upton? I mean, or is it better to do two separate surveys? I think it's really critical we do look at these populations that want to live in town, especially people that work here. But is it going to corrupt your data?
No, it will not corrupt it,
Okay.
because I can put a filter on to see if it's just the first question there,
Okay.
and I can filter it to see everyone who selected,
Okay.
yes, I am a resident. I will just see the answers for that. Or no, I work in town. I don't live in town. I can just see the answers for that.
Okay.
I can see it for all of it, like conglomerated together, but I do have the option to filter it. And I can do that for any of the questions. For everyone who lives in a selected, I live in a 4-person household, I can see all the answers for that. That's a really cool option for this tool.
Okay, then I like what Steve just said.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so it sounds like that's the best way to do it. Joe, you'd like to do it that way?
I think it just would be easiest for answering the survey.
All right, so let's just reopen the survey, again, just for the purpose of adding that one question. Do we want to change the numbering? Do we want to call it a 1A and then move on to 1? Or how do we want to do
I
that?
think we just renumber everything, just 1, 2,
Okay.
and Emily can filter it out. Correct, Emily?
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
All right, so,
And Emily, I liked your verbiage. Yes, I live in town, or B, I work in town. So then you're not going to get somebody just driving through.
okay.
Not that, and if they do, God love them.
All right, does everybody good with that? Christine, Jean, Catherine?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah.
You like that idea? Okay. Emily, you've got the question? All right.
Yeah, got it.
All right, why don't we just motion that we're going to add that one question in?
I make a motion, we add a question at the beginning of the survey.
I second it.
Okay, all right, let's go to roll call vote, please. Catherine,
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
Alan,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. So the motion carries. All right. So now we're on to discuss strategies for promotion of the community survey. We're still kind of on that. We talked about different places we wanted to administer it. Obviously, we're all aware that we're using SurveyMonkey. Joe, is there anything else that you can think of that we need to cover? Or does anybody have a comment? I don't see any hands raised. Any other comments as far as strategies for promotion of the survey?
I mean, it's going to be on the website. It's going to be on social media. We'll have printed off copies for special town meeting. That's
Good, okay, yeah.
in a couple weeks. So just additional avenues that we'll be able to have. So.
Okay. All right.
I had drafted a flyer. I can share that right now and get some input. All right, just a draft of the flyer we can use. You can see there, it's got the QR code that people can scan if they want to pull it up on their phone or iPad or whatever. It's also got the link. I customized the link, so it's surveymonkey.com/r/Upton housing. And then I can add, okay, so at the bottom we have paper surveys, copies available for pickup and drop off at Upton Town Hall, Senior Center, and Town Library. Should I add anything else or take anything out from that?
Or you can put as well as other locations. That way, if we do get shops and
Yeah.
places like that, we can drop them off.
Sorry, what was that, Kathy?
She
Oh, I was
said and
thinking
other
just-
locations.
Yeah.
Was that right, Catherine? And other locations?
Yes, yes, I'm sorry, I'm mumbling.
But I hate to be a pain in the butt, but then I don't think we want them dropping them off at the Coffee Bean or the
No.
super. So you'd have to rephrase that.
So my experience doing these is that businesses usually don't want to be responsible for having a staff. That's where a poster on a community board that has that works best. And then, you know, sort of those locations ended up being sort of standard. It's just the business owners just don't want to be, it'll get covered up, someone will drop it, they'll spill their coffee on it.
Sorry, you have a business in town, right? How about if we put a
Okay.
basket in your office?
Except that technically my office is in Whitesville.
Yeah.
Bad, kind of like you.
Business in town.
Well, I still have to work under a broker, so.
So Joe, can you
Alright.
also send this out to town appointed and elected officials?
Yeah.
Okay.
So did we want to add the and other locations, or have we decided that we don't want to do that?
No,
I
'cause
dropped
think the
this-
drop off would be
The drop off's
confusing.
gonna
be-
So you could pick them up or drop them off there. So
Right.
if you did do a paper one,
Mhm.
you know, you don't have to mail it, you don't have to pay postage, you just bring it back to the town hall,
Right.
the library.
And providing the QR code will allow people, if they're visiting a local coffee shop or automotive facility or realty office, they'll have the ability to scan it and fill it out at that point.
Yes.
So, all right, so you're good with that, Catherine, if we?
Yeah.
Do that, okay.
I still
Okay,
haven't learned
Emily.
how to do this.
It sounds good to me too.
Okay, very good. Emily, what else do you have for us?
We need to decide what day we want to officially launch the survey and what day we would like to close it.
Okay, so discuss the timeline.
Yes.
What do we think is an appropriate time as far as for the survey to be open? What would be a standard? Is 1 month the correct period of time, or 3 weeks, or what do we? What do
I
we
think a month is
as a
fair.
group?
So that we can
We can
move
function.
forward.
So,
Right,
I mean, I think, what day is special town meeting? Is it
May,
November.
November 1st.
first? Okay. So would we open it up like a week before and then end it if the first is a Tuesday? You know, all responses due by Friday?
Why are we putting it off that far for the community input?
Well, she's saying open it a week.
A week
worth
before,
through.
so we'd open it technically, I mean, we're mid-October now, so we'd open it by the time this gets done and the posters get up, we open it in about a week or so. And then Joe said have it available at special town meeting. And then we close it, if special town meeting, I'm assuming is Tuesday, we close it that Friday.
I would want to have it open longer than that.
Oh, yeah.
I would think we'd want to have it open for at least, it's getting busy, we're getting around the holidays.
I mean,
I
people
would-
aren't gonna bother, you gotta hit them, you know, the longer you give
Right.
somebody, they're gonna put it off.
So we don't have the town cry again.
No.
We will never have the town cry again. So the reality is that it probably should be open as long as possible. Just for people maybe to become aware of it. How's the community gonna become aware? You know, my thing again is the men's club donated that sign out front. I don't think it's been decades since the town clerk went out there and put up, if the town has lost the letters, I promise you the men's club will buy you more. I mean, that's a great resource with townspeople driving by. Why isn't that used? Can we use that to publicize this?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think we can.
One of the things is that just throwing out a deadline of Friday, November 18th. The next week is Thanksgiving.
That's what I was gonna suggest, yep.
You know, that then it's a reasonable amount of time. We can advertise that town meeting. it's gonna take CMRPC, a little bit of time just to finalize, so the survey wouldn't be live until probably Tuesday. We're gonna have to print off copies. I'm gonna have to walk around to the businesses, or we end up dividing up, having posters here so people can go to businesses themselves. So the first week is gonna just getting some of these things in motion. Social media and website are the easy things that can be immediately, but it's some of those other like physical aspects if we wanted to make sure that if, even providing to the schools and reaching out, having the schools reach out to employees.
We should probably provide some at Coach Road and Millhouse for those that don't have great mobility.
Yeah.
So you're thinking open at 17?
I mean, basically, it's open when it's open. Once they finalize it, it gets live, and they tell us, okay, it's live, and then we say it's open, and the deadline is the 18th of November. If that makes sense for everyone.
Can we also make it available, say, to the parent-teacher organizations?
So that's
town basketball,
yep,
and such like that. So we're getting,
and that's where once I get it out on the town's Facebook page, that's where like everyone here, you're all part of your own groups or whatever. This is team approach. Let men's group know and spread it all around.
How about the Upton men's clubs? Sure that they wouldn't have a problem with
yep,
listing it on that too, although I don't know if people actually go to it, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's where it's far and wide.
Okay. Any other thoughts regarding the timeline, the beginning and end date? So we hypothetically October 17th through November 18th. Do we think that we'd want to overlap into that Thanksgiving break, or do we want to think that we want to have that finished and all the data collected before the Thanksgiving break?
I think we should have it done before Thanksgiving break, and that would give CMRPC over the holidays to crunch the data, and then we can start the new year and with everything in place.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. Okay.
I agree as well.
All right. And Gene, I don't see your hand up. Does that sound good as far as timeline? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that sounds like a good timeline.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
And-
Do we want to set another meeting date?
Next steps and meeting dates. Joe, did you have?
Yeah, so I added that for discussion because we're going to be going through for about a month, just hoping that everyone is filling out the survey. But I wanted to open up for CMRPC to find out, about halfway during that period, should we be having another meeting to identify what are some of the other things that CMRPC is going to need on guidance. I figured that we'd have another meeting to sort of talk about either some of the structure of the plan, some of the other things we need to try to accomplish, input for CMRPC as far as if we need to start preparing maps to have like an internal workshop and thinking about some of those things. That may be an opportunity for a meeting and three sort of halfway in between, beginning right after town meeting, having another meeting here to sort of say, okay, here's some of the other things we need to start talking about and framing, because it's all going to fit into the community outreach meeting.
Okay.
So I figured we need something, but wanted to sort of find out from CMRPC with their other housing production plans, what maybe they would typically do in this sort of lull between when the survey goes out and when the survey ends, and start crunching numbers.
One thing, was there any way to get live data on how many surveys have been filled out or picked up? I mean, okay, that we should be checking in at that point. We got 2 weeks into the survey, whether where we are quantitatively.
Yeah. So I guess that spins off into a question that I would have. Emily, what would be your projection, or Gabe, your projection, as what do we expect to see for response? Would we expect to get 500 surveys back? Or how many, what do we expect? And the reason I ask is I ask that to kind of blend that into, when would we be meeting, again, November 10th-ish? Good. How do we kind of balance the timeline?
Yeah, we usually aim for 10% for our surveys. So what's the population of Upton? Remind me.
That would be like 800 out of 8,000.
Okay. We usually don't
We
get
have 8,000.
I feel
8,000.
like it'd be fair to aim for around 400 to 500.
You think about 400 to
If
500
we really,
responses?
I mean, it depends how much you want to promote it in your networks.
Okay.
What's that?
Yeah, Emily, do you recall how many Boylston got? I want to say it was like 5 something.
Yeah, it was around 500 or just short.
Yeah, but I also know that a group did postcards and did like a lit drop in different neighborhoods soliciting people's feedback. So that perhaps jumped up their numbers. But 500 out of Boylston is what, maybe 5,000. So that'd be about 10%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I've done in Rutland, that's like the one number I remember. I think so they have like 4,000, and I think I've done surveys there that have gotten like over 400. So it's like, yeah. So I think 800 is a good goal, but 500 is still a lot of people, and in a lot of in a lot of towns, how many people are actually out in the community and are going to see these things. So I think 400 or 500 is like, I think, a decent place to stop, but 800 would be a cool goal to reach.
I think 800 should be our goal, and we can aspire to, but we can expect to get less than that. But it's always good to have aspiration goals.
Okay. All right. So as far as a meeting date, then we could look forward into November. If we want to get back to a Monday meeting schedule, we have the 7th and the 14th would be available. If we wanted to try a Thursday, we have the 10th or the 17th. Again, the survey would close on the 17th. So I guess that takes that out of play. So what are members thinking as far as potential dates?
I would suggest a week earlier, because that would let us know if we really have to start, stepping up our own hand-to-hand combat in the street to get people to fill the thing out.
I was going to recommend the 7th because our finance director has asked for us to bump the tax classification hearing to the 14th.
Okay.
So at least I know for the Board of Selectmen, they would not meet the 7th. We'll meet the 14th instead. So, and that would line up with exactly what was just said as far as, we have a check-in, we can find out where we are, we can make a last push for the last 2 weeks of that survey.
All right.
I can't make the 7th, but that's not a determinant.
Will it be at the 6 or 7 o'clock?
So Gene, you said
6, honestly, because I feel bad for Joe that he has to wait here after a full day and we don't get going till 7. But honestly, no, I'd like to be out of here by 9 o'clock or so, and we might have a lot to discuss that night.
okay.
6 would be great for me.
Okay, 6.
Sounds good. Okay, 6. So we're talking 6 o'clock on the 7th. Now, Gene, did you say you cannot make that date?
I cannot. I have a family commitment that night.
I can be there.
Okay. Do we have any flexibility? Do you want us to carry on without you, or would you like to?
I don't want to interfere with the progress. I think the most important thing for me is to get an idea of the metrics and what we're getting in response, and then do whatever I can to promote getting more responses at that point. So yeah, I go on without me, and I just gather the information. We'll have the information, and I can act on it.
Jean, would the 10th be better for you?
The 10th would be better for me.
And the Thursday,
Right,
Tenth.
right.
I
Because I
can
haven't,
do it Thursday.
and I'd like to have it involved.
You wanna, is everybody agreeable for the 10th?
I'm not involved. I'll just point out, I don't know what my calendar says, Veterans Day observed. I don't know if that affects town hall at all, Joe.
I thought that's on the 8th, and then the 11th is Veterans Day. 8th is Election Day, and the 11th is Veterans Day.
I think you're right, Christine.
Yeah, that's what I have.
I'm sorry. My calendar says Boylston observes it on Thursday because they
Yeah.
close on Friday. There we go.
Right.
Okay.
For us, we're all set.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
So we could do November 10th at 6?
okay, sure.
Yes.
Somebody will send out a notice, I assume.
I agree.
Just so y'all know, I only read the first one.
Not all the responses? Okay. So you think that works better? Joe, from your perspective, we have no
Hey, it's-
conflicts with any other meetings?
No, it doesn't conflict with anything that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, very good. So the 10th, that looks good.
Yep.
Emily, was there anything else? As far as timeline, we had some discussion. I think we touched upon this at our last meeting, and I know Catherine and I were trying to get an idea, the committee's work, when we expect to finish everything, and does it follow a particular timeline, or do you look at this and say we'll be done in May or June or March, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it really depends how quickly we can get this moved forward. Some committees are super mobilized. Boylston, for example, I think we got that done super quick, like 8 months or something. Others take a little bit more time, just based on how frequently people can meet. But once we get this survey going and out, and we can start to plan for the housing forum, then everything kind of starts to fall together. So I would say, less than a year. I honestly can't remember when we started this, like September was our first meeting. So, by the summer, I would say we would have something good in place.
And then a follow-up, how long does it take the state to certify?
It takes them, they have a month to look at it, but usually it's quicker.
Okay, so basically, I think the first time we met, we talked about wrapping this up by May, because I thought that's when your contract finished.
That might be correct, yeah.
Yeah, is that realistic as far as your, okay, so,
Yeah.
it's knowing how I work, and assume everyone else is a little bit better than me on this, I'm very deadline motivated. So it helps if we know when we need to have the community survey by, because you need X amount of time to factor those, what comments people make, into the final plan. So it would help us to know what steps are needed, because then we can push ourselves to make sure it's done. I think you have a very motivated committee here, and it's good people. And I think that we just want to get it done and want to move forward with this.
Yeah, that's something where it's the quality of kind of the responses and the number of responses we really want to focus on, rather than making sure we're meeting the deadline for the entire plan. So if we do need to extend the survey, a couple weeks out, that's not a problem. I'd rather do that than to, only have like 100 responses in or something like that.
We'll get that.
Because this is the major
go
thing
door
where
to
we're
door.
getting
Yeah.
input from the community. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there
And
are
Joe-
other things my team can be doing while the survey is out. We're not just sitting here twiddling our thumbs. Like, we have data collection to do, and if there's any mapping or planning for the forum, we can do that on our end as well.
And Joe, if you need any help getting the posters out to different places, let me know.
I think that's any and all volunteers to then walk around and give to businesses. I just send me an email and we'll have things printed up so that you can just walk around.
Okay, good.
Okay, great. So I think that we got that item covered pretty thoroughly. Is there any other business, any other comments anybody would like to make? If there are none, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote. I can see everybody's in a hurry. Catherine,
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
Alan,
yes.
Laura, yes, Steve, yes. Okay, meeting has adjourned.